Do you have questions? Do you have thoughts?
There has been some, not a question, but it's a comment at the university here, projecting or graduating, we had a number of cultural programs related to the Holocaust, including performance of musicians, composers, and composers for Terezin, and performances of butterfly and others. And so they're taken in the university community when they're performing. There is a body of students and faculty who have been exposed to a great deal of literature and music, especially music that creating performance.
That's so great. In sign language, the sign for applause is this. I'll applaud. Yeah, I mean, it's very important for us also as, the survivors start to pass away. I mean, there are so few actually alive to continue to tell the stories. For us to take up the stories and to pass it on to the younger generation. I was thinking about that. Raina had a student pick me up at the airport last night, and quite knowledgeable, wonderful young woman, and she was saying, I really didn't know about Terezin until this project, and I was thinking about, she's interested in arts education, and this has impacted her, the exponential outreach and influence as we continue to educate and to explore this very difficult, extraordinarily difficult material, I think. So thank you for all that you were doing here.
We had an exhibition here, the artist Samuel Obama, a couple of years ago, Holocaust survivor, and we had school groups that came through and taught, and one of the questions was, if you could only pack immediately and take one thing with you, what would you take? And the kids were really interesting, and one of them said, I'll take my iPod, the other one said, I'll take my teddy bear, but one of them said, my brother. Oh. And I was like, oh my gosh. It was like the best ever.
And there's something about it too that exceeds culture, exceeds age. We worked with an inner city school in DC with 4th and 5th graders and did an exercise on creating their own butterfly. And we started off with, we just used all old paper, so it was found stuff, and we had old file folders. And we started off with write down words that represent obstacles to you and generate images and challenges. And then we stripped paper and glued it on top and created a cocoon. Then they folded it in half, cut out their butterfly, took that, put it aside. The inner shape became a frame, and then we had them do images of what you will use to cope, to move forward. And then we studied the poetry of the children, so there was relevance and resonance. One young woman who did that exercise when we did it last week did something so sweet. And we do it all in pantomime so that they don't have to verbalize their thoughts. And she volunteered right away. She wanted to go up and do it. And she went up and opened up a closet and started touching different things very tenderly. And I thought, oh, she'll take one of those objects or whatever. She closed it, locked it, held the key to her heart, and put the key in. And then we deconstruct after these exercises. And she said, because that key would represent all the things that mattered to me, and I don't necessarily have to have the real thing, but it's the memory that matters. And I thought that was interesting.
What has this project given to your university students, do you think?
Oh, so much. I mean, besides the background knowledge and all that represents, I think I asked the students, actually I think I have a quote. I asked the students in the honors colloquium to talk about what is the impact of this study for you? And not only, let me see if I have it. I hope I have it because I really don't want to paraphrase. Not only, what would you do if you were in that circumstances, but I challenged them to, what will you do? What will you do from all of this? Take all this information. And they formed small discussion groups and talked about it. And I went to that class immediately after a panel we did at the College of Arts and Sciences, where a colleague had just returned from Guantanamo, and he was talking about how difficult the circumstances were there. And we read one of his papers, and then this was a response from one of the groups. What will we do? Well, we may not leave this semester with the motivation to start a new program or initiative. We will be leaving this class with a sense of responsibility. That responsibility is to apply what we have learned in the course to the rest of our academic careers and beyond. The responsibility to use our talents, whatever they may be, to share with the world the things we know to be true, whether that be the hope of humanity and self-expression or the pain and harsh reality of genocide halfway around the world. The consensus within our group was that we have the responsibility to do our best to use the skills and resources we have to be a voice within our spheres of influence. And these were not theater students. There were 2 of the 18 in the course who were theater students. So that was a group who were processing in different ways. I had philosophy, religion, criminal justice, international studies, film, education. It was a mix of students. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Something maybe both of you could comment on because you share some of the same interests. One of the most famous and controversial remarks made after the Holocaust about arts was Adorno's comment that there can be no poetry after Auschwitz. And while there's a great deal of literature analyzing what he actually meant by that, it seems to me that anyone who is going to try to present something about the Holocaust through the arts at least needs to engage with the challenge that Adorno was making. While you're thinking about that, I'm going to announce to the audience here, since many of you have been to these things, 2 items of interest. First of all, Samuel Bach. There will be another exhibition of his work in the spring at Florida Holocaust Museum. There are discussions going on right now in Vilna about building a Samuel Bach museum, and if they're able to raise perhaps $10 million to do this, he's going to be donating 500 of his works to that museum. In this exhibit that we had, there still remains one of his favorite exhibitions of his work. The second thing, which news was announced yesterday, the music department made a CD of a recording last spring. Unfortunately, it doesn't contain Butterfly Song on it, but UNH commissioned two new compositions, and those are on it, as well as 3 songs from Larry Siegel's Cottage, and then some of Morton Gould's music suite for the old TV show Holocaust. And through a fairly complicated process, it is now one of the couple hundred nominees for Grammy in classical music. That was just announced yesterday.
That's great.
The music department was very excited about that. So that said,
Is that the Echoes of the Holocaust? Is that the?
Pardon?
I want that CD.
Echoes of the Holocaust
Who's
is
got the sale in the museum, in the museum shop too? So.
good. Yeah.
Good.
It's for sale in the museum shop.
Very
It's a very fine recording, and if you have nothing to do next weekend, you can fly back on Sunday and hear a performance of Cottage.
I would, but I have my final performance of Butterfly at 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon. Otherwise, I would. All right, I guess I have a response to that. I feel an obligation as an artist to sit in the fire, and whatever that represents. And for me, the notion of risking representation, which really what we do, and Lisa Peschel has written a really eloquent article about that, is that I think if I look at art is meant to be shared, and certainly with theater, it's meant to be performed, then I feel an obligation and a comfort to present. But I respect other perspectives at the same time.
I come from the perspective of having been a high school teacher and having taught night. And it came in the third quarter. The student said, "What are we reading next?" I said, "Night." "What's that about?" "About a boy in a concentration camp." "The Holocaust happened so long ago. Why do we have to learn about it?" And it hurt my soul that they were so indifferent about it. And I had to find ways to get them to connect to the individual and not the event. And for me, theater can do that for you because you have a live person representing somebody. And I feel like that kind of interaction where you see somebody going through an emotional journey helps soften people to it and get them to open up and learn more about it. And this play we are using as our drama day, where we've invited schools to come see it. And I feel it's very important to pass it on that way. And I did a tour of it, and then they came for me, Remembering the World of Anne Frank. And it's the reaching out and teaching for me that you have to risk representing and negotiating all of those possible issues that people might have with the idea of it. But I think it's a powerful way that can't be done just by telling people facts.
And those who could tell us the stories, really, there are so few even alive. Arno Schlustig, who's a highly recognized writer and survivor of Terezin, was a colleague of mine at AU when I directed the Diary of Anne Frank. And I asked him if he would just come and talk with the students at that point. And he said, "Anne Frank is my heroine." And I didn't know that. And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because I was a young person in a camp at the time that she was a young person experiencing so much oppression." And, he shared all of that. And I'm still very, very close with his son, who's at America, and I hope to see Arnold. He's in Prague now, and talk with him. That was years ago. Talk with him again about that. But I also feel it's my obligation, and maybe that's just a personal choice, a personal ethic, to present material again that asks difficult questions and puts it forward. And it is hard to sit in the fire sometimes.